I sat perfectly still on the hard wooden bench of the county probate court, the air thick with humidity and judgment. The ceiling fan spun lazily above, doing nothing to cool the tension that pressed against my chest. Across the room, my older brother, Benedict, stood confidently before the judge, his posture straight, his tone calm, professional, practiced. He spoke about me as if I were a case study, not his sister. "She has become increasingly unstable," he said, adjusting his cufflinks with surgeon-level precision, "a danger to herself, possibly to others." Behind him, my parents played their parts flawlessly. My mother dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief. My father stared at the floor as if crushed by unbearable sorrow. To anyone watching, they were the picture of a devastated family forced into an impossible decision. I did not cry. I did not interrupt. I did not defend myself. Instead, my fingers brushed the small recording device hidden inside my coat pocket, grounding me. My mind replayed the message Benedict had sent me that morning. "We're doing this because we love you." That was the moment clarity arrived. Love was not their reason. Love was their cover. Before I explain how my brother destroyed his own carefully constructed world in less than 10 minutes, you need to understand why I sat there silently, letting them describe me as a broken woman. To understand that, we need to go back 3 months, to the day my grandfather's will was read. That was the day the Vance family illusion finally shattered. We gathered in the old estate library, a room that smelled of dust, leather, and decades of unspoken resentment. Tall shelves lined the walls, filled with books no one read and secrets no one admitted. My grandfather's portrait hung above the fireplace, watching us with the same sharp eyes he'd had in life. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. What followed stunned everyone, except me. The Savannah estate, the main house, the surrounding land, the private art collection, all of it, worth more than $15 million, was left to me. Not to Benedict, not to my parents, to Octavia, the quiet one, the artist. The daughter who lived in the renovated carriage house and smelled faintly of paint thinner and turpentine. The room didn't explode immediately. Instead, the silence thickened, heavy and suffocating. You see, Benedict was the family's son. In my parents' universe, everything revolved around him. He was the gifted plastic surgeon, the social charmer, the future they bragged about at dinner parties. I was just background noise, an accessory, a convenient contrast that made him shine brighter. But my grandfather had seen what the rest of them refused to acknowledge. Benedict wasn't successful. He was reckless. The gambling debts. The investments that mysteriously failed. The money quietly borrowed and never returned. If the estate had gone to him, it would have been sold within days, liquidated to feed his addiction and silence dangerous people. When the lawyer left, the performance ended. My mother's tears vanished instantly. She turned toward me with a sharp, calculating look that made my skin crawl. "Benedict is in trouble," she said. "Serious trouble." My father nodded gravely. "People he owes money to. We need to sell the estate. Immediately." They called it protecting the family name. They called it responsibility. I finally saw the truth. I had never been their daughter. I was their tool. Every failure Benedict ever had was quietly shifted onto me. If he struggled, it was because I distracted him. If he drank too much, it was because I stressed him out. I existed to absorb the blame so he could remain flawless. They needed me weak. They needed him golden. But my grandfather had broken the system. I told them no. I told them I would not sell the estate to erase gambling debts. I told them I planned to turn the main house into a sanctuary, a place where women recovering from financial and emotional abuse could rebuild their lives through art. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face darkened with rage. Benedict laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You'd choose strangers over your own family?" he asked coldly. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Because strangers deserve safety. You deserve consequences." That was the moment the war began. I walked out knowing they would not forgive me. They would not reason with me. People like them didn't negotiate when they lost control. They eliminated obstacles. 3 days later, I returned to my studio. Something was wrong the moment I opened the door. The familiar scent of oil paint and cedar was gone, replaced by something metallic, sharp, unsettling. My easel lay overturned. Then I saw the canvas. My grandfather's portrait. 6 months of restoration, destroyed. The canvas had been slashed again and again, torn like wounded flesh. Red paint splattered the walls and floor in violent streaks, staged to look like madness. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't vandalism. This was a warning. Well, look what you've done. Benedict stepped from the shadows, wearing his white lab coat like armor. His face held concern, but his eyes were empty. I tried to protect you, he said softly. But this is a manic episode. Get out, I whispered. I can't, he replied calmly. I already called for help. Sirens echoed outside. Blue lights flashed through the windows, illuminating the red paint like blood. 2 officers entered. They looked at the room, then at me. The story told itself. I felt the scream rise in my chest, hot, desperate. But then something colder took its place. Understanding. This was his trap. If I screamed, I proved him right. If I fought, I became the unstable sister. So I did the only thing he didn't expect. I went silent. I turned around and held out my wrists. For the first time, Benedict looked unsettled. As they led me away, I saw him standing in the driveway, watching, calculating, already planning the next move. He thought the game was over. He was wrong. The psychiatric hold was designed to break me. Every detail was calculated to strip me of control, to convince me that I was powerless. They removed my shoelaces, my phone, every personal object that reminded me of my autonomy. The fluorescent lights buzzed incessantly, a relentless hum that made the walls feel like they were closing in. Doctors arrived at intervals, asking questions about voices I hadn't heard, shadows I hadn't seen, and delusions I had never imagined. I answered calmly, methodically, as if reciting a script only I could see. I ate the bland food, meditated on the thin cot, and observed everything. The room wasn't a prison, it was a chessboard. And I had already decided my first move. Every second I spent unbroken, every hour I remained silent, was a crack in the structure Benedict and my family had built to define me as insane. I would not perform. I would not react. I would not give them the scene they needed to validate their lies. 72 hours passed. Exhaustion tugged at me, but I remained resolute. When the hold expired, Kane appeared. She had my medical records, meticulously compiled over years, proving a total absence of psychosis, no history of instability, no threats or self-harm. She arrived like a force of nature, armed with legal authority and logic, sharp enough to cut through Benedict's deception. Within 6 hours, they had no choice but to release me. The hospital's attempt to strip me of freedom had failed. When I stepped back into sunlight, the world felt different. My senses were sharper, my resolve solidified. But I expected a new form of attack, a continuation of the charade. Instead, my parents were waiting on the porch, their faces unmasked, vulnerable in a way I had not seen before. Genevieve, my mother, wore a simple cotton dress. No makeup, no silk scarves, no carefully curated sorrow. Her hands trembled as she reached for mine. "Octavia," she whispered. We didn't know. We didn't know what he would do." Her words were sincere, yet they carried the weight of years of complicity. She knelt, holding my hands, tears running freely. "He told us you were off your medication. He said you were dangerous." We believed him. My father stepped forward, holding his head low. "We've been blind," he admitted. "We let him manipulate us because we wanted to believe in success, in the golden child. But we see the truth now. We see what he is." I looked at them. Part of me, the part that had once been 5 years old and desperate for love, wanted to believe them, wanted to feel the reassurance of a family that had finally awakened. But another part, sharper and colder, analyzed every gesture, every hesitation. The relief in their posture, the immediate promises of reconciliation, was too neat, too predictable. "Please," Genevieve pleaded, "come to dinner on Sunday, just us. We'll tell Benedict he's cut off from the trust. We want you there to witness it. We want a fresh start." I looked at the house looming behind them, the sprawling estate that had been both my inheritance and my battleground. "Sunday," I said slowly. "I'll come." Their relief was almost theatrical. Hugs, nods, promises of roast lamb, and a new beginning. They left as if the performance had been flawless. But I had learned to read the layers beneath appearances. I had studied paint, perspective, and human behavior. I knew a forgery when I saw one. The tears were real, but their timing and intent were calculated. Benedict remained the investment. They would never remove him for cruelty alone. Only financial risk could force their hand. And in that moment, I knew I was the risk. I was the cost they had yet to calculate. I returned to my studio and retrieved a small velvet box from my desk. Inside was a diamond brooch, not for the gems, but for the modification I had made. Hidden behind the center stone was a high-definition lens, a microphone sensitive enough to capture whispers across the dining room. If they wanted a performance, I would provide one, but I would be the observer, not the participant. Sunday arrived like the shadow of a storm. The main dining room of the estate was a dark, imposing space. Heavy wood panels swallowed the natural light, and a crystal chandelier cast fragmented reflections across the silver and china. The room felt like a fortress designed to intimidate, to remind anyone who entered that they were in someone else's world. Benedict sat at his usual place, calm, composed, exuding control. My parents moved like skilled performers, their smiles polished, their gestures precise. Every step, every word, was crafted to maintain the illusion of a family reunion and reconciliation. I pretended to drink the wine poured for me, coughing into my napkin to mask the taste. Minutes passed. I let my body slump slightly, allowed my words to slur ever so subtly. I could see Benedict's eyes light up. He believed the trap was working. From across the table, I observed every whisper, every glance. They spoke openly of the dosage, the plan to coerce me into signing documents, the strategy to declare me mentally unfit. All of it, captured, documented, recorded by the tiny lens hidden on my person. Every sinister word, every cruel intention became proof. Benedict did not realize that the game had already shifted. He believed he controlled the narrative. I was rewriting it in real time. By acting the part he expected, by feigning weakness while maintaining absolute awareness, I turned their own strategy against them. As the night progressed, the tension was palpable. Every smile my parents gave him, every nod of agreement, was a performance layered upon deceit. But behind the veneer, I saw the fractures forming, hesitation in Genevieve's tone, a flicker of doubt in Alistair's posture. Their investment in Benedict had blinded them, but not completely. They had not accounted for me. When the time came to present the documents, I revealed the evidence. The videos, the audio, every word of their plotting, every step of Benedict's manipulations, it all played out like a courtroom drama, live in the dining room. Benedict's calm cracked. His composure faltered. He shouted, attempted to deny, but the proof was undeniable. He had destroyed the very painting that secured his claim, his actions betraying him beyond repair. The inheritance clause triggered. His greed, his violence, his manipulation, all became his undoing. The estate, the legacy my grandfather had entrusted to me, remained intact. My parents' performance collapsed under the weight of reality. Benedict was left with nothing but his own schemes, unraveling spectacularly before all of us. I stood there silent, watching the fall of a carefully constructed illusion. The dining room, once a stage for manipulation, became the arena of truth. And for the first time in my life, I was not just an observer of my own story, I was its author. The aftermath of that evening was unlike anything I had imagined. Benedict, once untouchable, now floundered in the ruins of his own making. His arrogance, his meticulous planning, his carefully maintained public image, all had been shattered in one night. The estate remained mine, intact and secure, a fortress of inheritance and proof of survival. But survival, I quickly realized, carried its own weight. My parents were subdued, their performance of grief replaced with genuine reflection. They didn't try to manipulate me again, not yet. Perhaps they feared exposure. Perhaps they were beginning to see the truth. Genevieve, usually so poised and commanding, now moved with hesitancy, like a woman learning to navigate a world she had ignored for decades. My father's gaze no longer bore down with judgment. It was tentative, seeking reconciliation, but unsure if it could be earned. I took stock of the house, my sanctuary, and the lessons embedded in every corner. Every crack in the paint, every canvas I had restored, every tool I had used to create art had taught me something essential. Observe carefully, trust the evidence, and never surrender control to those who would manipulate it. That day, those lessons became more than artistic principles. They became survival strategies. The ruined portrait of my grandfather remained in the studio, a scarred testament to the events that had unfolded. I did not repair it further. I left it as it was, a reminder of what I had endured and what I had overcome. The canvas, flayed and splattered with red, was no longer a symbol of destruction but of resilience. Visitors to the estate, now part of the sanctuary I had envisioned, often paused before it, sensing the story without knowing the details. It was proof that beauty and truth could endure, even when violence and betrayal sought to dominate. Benedict's downfall rippled beyond our immediate family. The destruction of my grandfather's art, the attempted framing of my sanity, and the evidence captured during the dinner made headlines in the local press. Colleagues whispered about the scandal, patients canceled appointments, and his reputation crumbled. Meanwhile, the sanctuary I had dreamed of, rooms filled with light, art supplies, and healing spaces for women, flourished. The estate, once a battlefield, became a haven. Every recovered painting, every sculpture, every canvas told a story of survival and empowerment. In the weeks that followed, I reconnected with those who had supported me silently. Kane, who had orchestrated my release from the psychiatric hold, became my confidant and legal ally. She helped me establish protocols to protect the sanctuary and ensure that no one could manipulate it or me again. Together, we implemented strict access rules, monitored communications, and trained staff to be vigilant without paranoia. I had learned that the most dangerous threats often came from within, one's own family. Trust had to be earned and evidence had to be preserved. Despite the chaos, life returned to a rhythm. I painted. I restored. I organized workshops and art therapy sessions. Women who had suffered abuse, financial or emotional, found solace in the sanctuary. Their stories, their resilience, and their courage became intertwined with my own. Each smile, each completed canvas, each expression of hope reinforced my decision to defend what was rightfully mine and transform it into something greater. Benedict attempted to regain some semblance of control. He filed lawsuits, demanded arbitration, and sought to claim portions of the estate. Each effort failed spectacularly. The videos, the recordings, the meticulously preserved evidence from the dinner proved not only his manipulations but his intention to harm and deceive. Courts ruled decisively, and Benedict's influence in the family diminished to nothing. The golden child was gone, replaced by the shadow of his own recklessness. My parents, meanwhile, learned painful lessons. They were forced to confront their complicity in enabling Benedict, to acknowledge the blind favoritism that had allowed cruelty to flourish under their roof. Reconciliation was slow and deliberate. They could no longer assume authority over me or my inheritance. Respect, trust, and accountability had to be rebuilt, brick by brick. As the sanctuary grew, I found my own sense of peace. The estate became more than a property or a symbol of wealth. It was a living, breathing monument to justice, creativity, and empowerment. The art on the walls, both restored and original, told stories of endurance. The women who came through the doors found safety, mentorship, and validation. I discovered, in turn, that healing others was inseparable from healing myself. Every brushstroke, every sculpture, every restored canvas reminded me of the power of observation, patience, and strategy, the very qualities that had saved me from Benedict's manipulations. Occasionally, I would walk past the flayed portrait of my grandfather, now displayed in a glass case for all visitors to see. It was no longer just a painting. It was evidence, history, and inspiration. I had survived the betrayal of family and the assault on my sanity. The estate, the sanctuary, and my life were intact because I had understood the danger, acted deliberately, and used the tools at my disposal to turn deception against itself. The memory of that courtroom, the silence, the tension, the way Benedict had spoken of me as though I were a patient rather than a sister, remained vivid. But it no longer held power over me. Each day, each interaction, each piece of art reinforced my autonomy. I had transformed the instruments of my near destruction into tools of creation and liberation. The tragedy had been real, but it had not defined me. I had defined myself through careful observation, strategic silence, and unwavering resolve. 6 months later, the sanctuary was thriving. Classes, exhibitions, and workshops brought new life to the estate. Local artists collaborated with visitors, creating projects that combined restoration, healing, and storytelling. The estate, once a battlefield of family deceit, had become a beacon of empowerment. The story of survival, justice, and resilience spread quietly but firmly through the community. People came to witness not only the beauty of the art, but the triumph of determination and intellect over manipulation and cruelty. And through it all, I remembered the lesson Benedict had inadvertently taught me. Those who attempt to control others rarely anticipate the full extent of the human spirit. Plans, schemes, and deceptions can fail when confronted with clarity, patience, and strategic action. The estate, my sanctuary, and my life were proof that resilience, intelligence, and observation could turn even the most insidious threats into catalysts for growth and triumph. Benedict was gone from the family, his presence reduced to whispered cautionary tales. My parents, though still imperfect, had begun to understand the value of truth over appearances. The sanctuary continued to flourish, a living testament to survival, strategy, and the power of transformation. And for the first time, I walked forward carrying only my own story, not the lies, manipulations, or betrayals of others. I had survived the war within my own family, reclaimed what was mine, and transformed a legacy of deceit into one of art, empowerment, and resilience. The Vance estate no longer symbolized oppression. It embodied freedom, creativity, and justice. And in the center of it all, the flayed portrait of my grandfather stood not as a victim of destruction, but as a witness to survival, a reminder that truth endures when courage and strategy guide it. I was free. I was unbroken. And I was finally, unequivocally myself.